Senator Moore.
Deputy President, last Saturday I was honoured to be invited to the 14th anniversary of CLAN. People in this place know well that term CLAN. It stands for the Care Leavers of Australia Network. This extraordinary bunch of people, which many of us met for the first time in 2003, were formed originally 14 years ago in the year 2000 when Joanna Penglese, a woman who was wondering about doing a PhD, her own experiences as someone who had experienced care in New South Wales had led her to believe that there needed to be more work done around the issues that face people who had been in care. So she had the strength to put an advertisement in a newspaper which said, "Were you in care?" And it was a gamble. We know it was a gamble. She didn't know how many people were going to respond. She didn't know whether people would really understand what it meant. But as a result of that newspaper advertisement, a copy of which is now treasured in the CLAN Museum in Bankstown, there were hundreds of responses. One of the women that Joanna met was Leonie Sheedy, an extraordinary woman as well, who had been through the care system in the Catholic system in Victoria. Leonie and Joanna met, and from that a legend has been born. The care network that CLAN has set up for people across this country who experienced living in institutions, particularly in the period from the 1950s onwards in our country, that care network, I think now, has actually taken the place in many people's lives of family. We got to know CLAN and very many other people when the Community Affairs Committee did their original report, which we call Forgotten Australians. That report was in August 2004. And the scenes in this place, Mr Acting Deputy President, will never be forgotten. As senators stood to a packed gallery and expressed their own feelings about what it was like to work through many months, hearing contributions and experiences of young people, old people, people who looked to us to hear what they said and to do something about it. The CLAN network was key in agitating to ensure that we would have a Senate inquiry. And from 2000 until 2004, that was one of their key aims, to ensure that their Parliament would listen to the issues and come up with some processes that would acknowledge what had happened. Mr Acting Deputy President, the key issue was acknowledgement of what had happened. We had people who said, we just wanted people to know what happened to us. Nobody believed us. We were without power. Through the process, we heard, as we said in the opening of our report, horrific stories about the experiences of people in our own country. The committee, and I quote, received hundreds of graphic and disturbing accounts about the treatment and care experienced by children in out-of-home care. Many care leavers showed immense courage in putting intensely personal life stories on the public record. These stories outlined a litany of emotional, physical and sexual abuse, and often criminal physical and sexual assault. Their stories also told of neglect, humiliation, deprivation of food, education and health care. Such abuse and assault was widespread across institutions, across states and across the government, religious and other care providers. In response to the evidence that we heard, in response to the quite traumatic experience of listening to the accounts, of reliving with people who were telling their experiences sometime for the very first time, our committee came up with a report of which I think all of us are very proud. It is still one of the reports created by the Senate which has received the most interest, and people consistently still ask to have copies of this report for ongoing research and also to stimulate further action in the area. But we made a report with over 40 recommendations. Now, as often happens with Senate reports, some of these recommendations are taken up and some not. But one which is of particular interest, Mr Acting Deputy President, is that we heard from very many of the people who came to see us that they thought that the experiences that they had suffered should be the subject of a Royal Commission. Now, as senators listening to this process, that is a really big call, Mr Acting Deputy President, asking for the expense, the focus and the concentration of a Royal Commission. Now, we as senators said that we thought that the way it should operate would be that originally we should look to the goodwill of the various organisations and institutions and governments who were absolutely aware of what had gone on. There is no doubt, Mr Acting Deputy President, that one of the things that came out of our inquiry was that these issues were not unknown. They were unknown to the wider public. I have no doubt about that. And I often tell the story, Mr Acting Deputy President, that we heard accounts of people who were in the Nudgee Children's Home in Brisbane, which was run by the Sisters of Mercy. My family is a strong supporter of the Sisters of Mercy, and we were going through Sisters of Mercy convents at the same time as people were telling us they were having situations in their own lives in these institutions which were horrific. And I tell the story, Mr Acting Deputy President, that if my mum and the people that she worked with who were raising money for some of these organisations and institutions had known what were going on, it would have stopped, I have no doubt. But what was clear was that it was not known to the wider public. However, as a result of this inquiry, we believed that these stories, these histories should be made public. And much has been done, Mr Acting Deputy President, in terms of having public institutional awareness, widespread awareness training, and also having memorials around so that people can actually see that this history is real and understand. But what the senators said about the Royal Commission was that should there be no movement within a reasonable time of the organisations that had been involved and the governments to actually redress the processes that had gone on, there would be the need to reconsider the issue of a Royal Commission. 2004, Mr Acting Deputy President. We revisited these issues in 2006, and still it was clear that whilst some action in some states was progressing and some institutions had begun interaction with people who had been in them, that the rate of progress was insufficient. So a continuing advocacy, continuing interaction with groups like Clan was being made across our community and to parliamentarians from all sides of the place. And in fact, one of the really positive aspects about the interaction with Clan is that many federal parliamentarians who had heard and been involved in the issues around care leavers were able then to become patrons of the Clan organisation. And some of them included Senator Steve Hutchins, who was here. Certainly we have Mr Steve Irons in the other place, who has been a very public advocate because of his own personal experiences, which he has put on the record. Also Jason Clare, the local member of for Canterbury Bankstown, where Clan has their national office. Richard Marl from Bendigo, and the reason Richard is involved, apart from having met Leone, which is a reason in itself, is that there are significantly large institutions in Bendigo with quite chequered histories in this area. It was probably one of my proudest moments when I was asked also to be a patron of Clan, and it's an experience which has enriched me and actually held the opportunity to meet many wonderful people who have become friends through this process, Mr Acting Deputy President. However, the pressure from all sides continued to mount because we could see that whilst some progress had been made, we still had not actually got to the actual heart of the horror that was happening in our community, in our institutions, and particularly around the issue of sexual abuse. Mr Acting Deputy President, I am one of those people who think that whilst the Royal Commission that we have set up is an extraordinarily valuable institution and one which I celebrate, and we'll talk more about that soon, the fact that the extent of the focus has been around the issue of sexual abuse should not be any message to the wider community that the only harm done was of a sexual nature. In fact, one of the things that was most clear in our committee report was that the range of abuse that people who were caught up in these situations and institutions went far beyond just the criminal actions of sexual abuse. And it was the psychological abuse of people who were without love or support. And clearly throughout our report we focused on the importance of the feeling of family, the feeling of support and the feeling of love, all of which were absent in the lives of so many of these children. And the impact of that loss continues throughout life. And when you have people who are in their 60s and 70s sitting and talking to you, explaining that not only have they been victims of the lack of love in their lives, but they have felt that their children and grandchildren have continued this pain because they did not have the ability to parent, to love, because they had no personal experience of it. So it is important that we acknowledge that by the creation of the Royal Commission in January 2013, this is a great achievement and something that many people have worked towards for many years, but the creation of a Royal Commission into sexual abuse is not the full extent of the support and need that people who went through the institutional care need to have. But on the point of the Royal Commission, Mr Acting Deputy President, we know that we now have a Royal Commission working in Australia and working very hard on these issues of sexual abuse. And I know that two senators earlier this evening, in talking about the first report of the Commission, talked about the areas that have been covered and also the desperate need to ensure that there is an extension to the work of this Royal Commission. We cannot leave this work unfinished. We made a commitment to the people who came to this place in 2004 that we would listen to their voices and we would respond to their need. They asked for their issues to be acknowledged. I believe that there has been acknowledgement. They asked for research to be done about the issues around institutional care. We believe that that has occurred and continues to occur. But they also asked that the horror, the crimes they suffered should be the subject of a Royal Commission, and that has now occurred. But what would be the absolute betrayal would be to not fulfil the criteria that was given to this Commission and to walk away from this group of people, again, not giving them the attention, the support, the acknowledgement they deserve. The commission that we have, that was set up in January, was appointed with the number of commissioners. It was looking into a total budget of $281.13 million for the period 2012 to 2016. 6 commissioners with the chair, Justice Peter McClelland. The key priority that was acknowledged by the commissioners was to hear from people who had experienced sexual abuse as a child. That was their number one their need. And what they've done, they set their work very deliberately. They needed to have a strong community awareness campaign. They also needed to network with existing support groups and institutions, and key amongst those support groups is Clan. And they have had an intimate relationship with this commission from the day it started. And I was fortunate at the 14th anniversary to see the trust which people who are not used to giving trust, Mr Acting Deputy President, the trust that these people gave to that commission. That is their hope, that the Commission will fulfil the responsibilities of our Australian community to these people who were so damaged. In fact, the 14th anniversary was also called the Royal Commission Forum, Truth, Justice and Redress for all Australian care leavers. The keynote speaker at the 14th anniversary was Justice Peter McClelland. And I respect this man for his professionalism, but most particularly for his compassion, Mr Acting Deputy President. The gentleman came and spent over an hour and a half with these people. An address, which I will have a copy of hopefully very soon, which talked about what was going on in the Commission and the various pressures that were taking part. But then over 35 minutes of question and answer, patiently responding to the needs of the people who wanted to talk with him, many of whom had had the opportunity through the special private sessions of the Commission to talk, but just so they could be there with their family, because, Mr Acting Deputy President, Clan, I believe, has become the family for so many of these young people who are now older. This is their family. They didn't have families, many of them, when they were young, but now Clan, the wonderful network that it embraces, has become their family. And so together they were able to talk with a person who had been very important to them. Out of that process, Mr Acting Deputy President, came the work that had been done up to this time. The wide and the importance of the private sessions, which by May 2014, 1,677 private sessions had taken place. 1,632 written accounts had been provided to the Commission. These accounts can be done with some personal help provided by networks so that people can have their voices heard with the support they need, because one of the things that came out of our committee hearing was that so many people who had been in care had not received effective education, so that they need help to communicate their own experiences. So the written accounts have been so valuable for that. The public hearings, of which there have been 13, also look at particular institutions and issues and give open sessions so people can be subject to evidence and also have questioning about what's gone on. We also have the research stream. Again, as I said, one of our recommendations in 2004 was for more research in this area, and there have been 21 research projects already completed with 30 underway. 7 issues papers have been developed. But to make this commission fulfil its aim, and the terms of reference are clearly on the on the record, we are asking for, the commission is asking for an extension of their work so that they will be able to complete the work that they have made a commitment to do, to ensure that they can make sure that the people who have asked for private sessions can have them, that public hearings can be concluded and more research papers done. And I think very importantly, Mr Acting Deputy President, we will have the opportunity with the extended time to go back and re-look at some of the evidence that had already been held, because we know that through some of the public inquiries, the public sessions, changes have already been taking place in some of the institutions like the Salvation Army, certain elements of the Catholic Church. In some other areas, they have committed to changing their practices. By extending the program, we could then be able to go back and see whether that's actually worked. A really important element for the public to see what the value of the Commission has been. Mr Acting Deputy President, we have no option but to respond to the need to continue this commission. We have started the work. People in Clan have been working since 2000 to ensure their voices have been heard. Our Senate inquiry in August 2004 and then subsequently have also said this work must be done. The Royal Commission has already made its first report. It is compulsory reading, Mr Acting Deputy President. People should read these 2 volumes, in particular Volume 2, which are individual accounts of people's pain and hurt, and also the way they are rebuilding their lives. We must have the Commission extended for the 2 years that it has asked for. By that time, we then will be able to make sure that those promises that many of us made in this place in 2004, that those people who had been called the forgotten Australians because their pain, their suffering, their hurt was not acknowledged, we told them in this Senate that they would no longer be forgotten. The Royal Commission can assure that that will be truth, and we need to be part of that truth, Mr Acting Deputy President.